people listening to this, but it sounds like he would do some form of slight, I say slight because maybe it wasn't GHB, but some form of like getting them tipsy, so date rape kind of thing.
Well, both Jane Doe 1 and 2 testified that they had one drink and were like just so intoxicated afterwards, so unusually intoxicated. And the prosecutors, they just flat out said it, that he drugged them. He drugged them and then raped them. And so Jane Doe 1, it involved a jacuzzi and then taking her up to a bathroom and putting her in a shower. And then Jane Doe 2, it involved inviting her over and giving her a big glass of wine, and that also involved a jacuzzi. And it was they just both testified at how violent it was, and they were like sort of in and out of consciousness and saying no, stop, and he was just like not, it was just very violent. It was graphic, and and I can tell you, I heard their testimony 3 separate times, preliminary hearing and 2 trials. These women were absolutely consistent. I would say that they learned from being cross-examined by Tom Mesereau and then Philip Cohen twice how to, answer them, a little better and anticipate what was going to be asked of him a little better. But the story wasn't changing. They were absolutely consistent. They did a great job.
And you're sitting in there because Danny was on bail, so he comes in there on his own recognizance and everything. It's got to be so strange, especially after maybe you've heard all this twice and you're at the 3rd trial, he's still on bail, like walking in there every day with a coffee with his wife. It's like, this dude, unless we are really missing something here, is a serial rapist, and he's walking in the same door I am.
It was funny because it was up on the 9th floor, which is the most secure floor in that building at the criminal courts building in L.A., and you have to go through security to get in the building, and then you have to go through a separate security just to get on that floor. And most days, not every day, but most days, the first 3 people on that floor were me and Danny and Bijou. And I would sit on one side of the hallway, and they would sit on the other side of the hallway. And, it was just, he would always be there with a big, giant Starbucks iced coffee, and then Mom would show up, and then his attorneys would show up. And it was a little surreal, I will tell you that.
Yeah, and they know you're the guy who, broke this and kind of started the whole thing, which is very cool, by the way, that you were able to do that. But, for people out there, obviously we've been talking about Danny Masterson now for the last 10, 15 minutes, and a lot of people know he's this really well-recognized actor. He was in that 70s show. That was kind of the original thing to put him all the way on the map. But do we know his backstory of when he joined Scientology, or any of the thought process as to why and what types of roles he had in the organization?
Well, he was brought up in it. His mom and his dad and then his stepdad were all in it.
Are they still in it?
Oh, yeah. Well, his mother still is, definitely. Whoa. His stepdad is not. Joe Reish is a great guy, and he's been one of my best sources about, Danny's early life and what they've been through. But yeah, he was very much brought up in it, and his mom was his manager, and he was doing commercials when he was very, very young. They were kind of there was a particular larger clan of the Mastersons, the Rabisis, Jason Lee,
like Giovanni Ribisi.
Yeah. Giovanni grew up in it, and his sister grew up in it.
Another amazing actor.
Really? And they were all kind of part of this young Hollywood thing. And I remember when Going Clear came out, I was fortunate enough to be part of that HBO film that Alex Gibney made, Lawrence Wright.
Great documentary.
And we went to Sundance for that, for the opening of that in Utah. And I remember Danny had gone to that Sundance to give like an interview trashing, what we were doing. Danny was one of the celebrities that was willing to give interviews and badmouth the critics of Scientology. Very few would do that, but he grew up in it. He was kind of a fiery defender of Scientology.
He really believed in it.
Well, based on what came out in court, he knew he'd been protected by Scientology for a long time and gotten away with a lot of things.
That's the thing. I think, we're going to talk today about different ways people get brainwashed over time. You've obviously covered this for a long time from the outside to try to evaluate it from like a psychological standpoint. But when it comes to the really powerful ones that they put on a pedestal in there, someone like a Danny Masterson, best example obviously being a Tom Cruise, it does feel to me, looking at it, that the air of invincibility that they feel, meaning the actors, the famous people, with the organization operating on their behalf, seems to completely blind them to the methods with which that invincibility is born.
Right. People ask me, what's the appeal? Why do? And also, I want to always point out, they have a few celebrities. It drives me crazy whenever I see a reporter say, Hollywood's got so many Scientology celebrities. No, they don't have so many. It's a few, right?
And they've got good ones though.
And they've lost some. they've lost some, right? Some older, but what's the appeal? I mean, what is Scientology? Scientology is this thing that this science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard came up with in the 50s. And he had this idea that there's this whole galactic drama going on that you're a part of that you've forgotten you were ever part of.
Right.
And if you can just remember who you were 100,000, million, billion, trillion years ago, you will remember how you have taken part in this galactic-wide narrative for years and years.
Now pay $35 to take this test. Thank you.
Now pay $800 or $900 an hour.
Oh my!
To go through that counseling, and it takes years. I mean, it takes $1 million, $2 million to get up to that level where the top celebrities are. But that's the idea, is that and it's very attractive to some people who are unhappy with their life or they're frustrated with things, to be told, no, this person you are now is just a manifestation of this much more important thing, Satan it's called. You're actually trillions of years old. You've been through incredible adventures. You just don't remember them. We're going to help you remember them.
I mean, I laugh, but they get some people. They get some people who, objectively speaking, sometimes have a pretty good brain on them too.
But what I'm getting to is that, okay, so I talked to a guy once who went through that. He was saying, well, listen, Tony, so I remember one session, I remember that I was literally running a planet. I was running a prison planet somewhere, and I was killing people by the tens of thousands. And then the session was over, and I'm back to being Joe Blow, me, nobody. And he says, I was walking on air. I was like, I'm really somebody hugely important in the galaxy, just that nobody around me knows it. That's where that arrogance comes from.
What do you mean he was running a prison, he was hallucinating?
This is what auditing is. They want you to remember these things that happened to you before.
So he thought he was remembering that he had run this prison planet.
Yeah.